I'm Greg Conti, and I teach computer science and computer security at West Point. And I hope to do several things with this talk. One is to explore the process of conducting research, because I think a lot of people in the community are doing exceptional work, and it's something we as a community need to think about how we do it, and maybe there's some lessons learned we can learn from each other. For those new or thinking about it, hopefully this will inspire you to conduct research. And for those of you that have a great deal of experience in conducting research, hopefully there's some things in here that are new to you, many of which came through hard knocks. And while I've been doing security research for the past decade, I'm not claiming to have all the answers, but I do claim that I've spent a good bit of time thinking about this and helping other people do it as well. So again, put a lot of effort into this, and hopefully you'll leave with some tools and techniques that you can apply to your own work. I'm here as a free citizen and not a representative of any government. So what is research? Research, to me, is the search for knowledge, trying to find something new, something that hasn't been discovered before. Maybe to solve a problem. Sometimes it's done rigorously using the scientific method. Sometimes it's done informally. And here's how I like to think about it. If you look at the gray sphere in the lower left, that line, I think of that as the present, and then you can look out 10, 50 years. And going back a little into the past, things that we've already discovered, we have things like books. It's well-synthesized information, exists in libraries. And then college courses. And then as you approach the edge of human knowledge, you hit graduate courses, you hit talks at Black Hat or DEF CON, and they appear at the edge. And those could also be research papers. And the idea then is to not rediscover fire. The idea is to find something someone else hasn't done and fill in the blank and push out collectively the edge of human knowledge. Unfortunately, there are pockets of knowledge out there that we don't have access to. It could be hidden behind paywalls. It could be in classified archives. You may have heard of GCHQ's claim to have discovered the public key encryption. It could be proprietary information that isn't shared. But the idea, though, is if you make a discovery and you're at the edge, you have this ability to look outward and predict, and you see the problems, look farther than anyone else has seen, and identify other problems that can be solved, other questions that can be answered. And then even farther out, you have science fiction authors, maybe 50, 100, 1,000 years out, that are just speculating about the future. And I think there are many science fiction fans in the audience, I know I am, and you can draw great inspiration from those authors. So why conduct research at all? Well, I mean, it's in many ways, to me, it's about advancing human knowledge. You're doing something that we benefit from others' work, and we're giving something back. And one of the most pleasurable experiences is doing something and seeing someone else build upon it. And along the way, you can make yourself an expert in a given area because you've specialized in it. And you pick up new skills, and frankly, it's fun. Hackers in particular have a great deal to offer when conducting research. And first, let me say it's great to have resources like Wikimedia Commons that you can search on Coloring Book and find pictures of someone who's uploaded their child's photo of coloring outside the lines, royalty-free. So it's pretty cool that they make that available. But what hackers bring to the table is this native curiosity. Folks are clever in the hacker community. They like to color outside the lines. Often they do excellent work, and importantly and frequently they have less constraints. If you think of industry, they have to really show value to the bottom line. In academia, they tend to be like dogs on the hunt, sniffing for the latest research grants. But the hacker community can choose things that are fun and interesting and just important to them. So this sounds pretentious, the idea of seeking to be the world expert, but it really isn't. I'd argue that we've got probably 100 world experts sitting in this room in some particular area, and many well on their way. And those are the people that are at the edge. They can see important problems and either work on themselves or help tip off somebody else that maybe you want to take a look at this problem. And Malcolm Gladwell in Outliers came up, spouted research that said there's like a magic number of how much effort you need to put in to become world class in something. And the magic amount of time was 10,000 hours. And there's people in this room that have put 10,000 hours in, and probably some with 20, and some on that path, because people, if you get it, you get it, and you're into it, and you put a tremendous amount of time in, and you gain momentum. As a Dungeons & Dragons player, I can't help but think in terms of experience points, that you can single class and put all your experience points into one area to get depth, or you can multi-class and put your experience points into many different areas, so you progress farther, but you gain breadth. And in research, you're focusing in one particular area or a small group of areas, but it's also important to balance that with breadth, so you understand the context of what you're doing. And if you get a little bit off, in academia I see that, if you get a little bit off someone's specialty area, they don't know what they're talking about because they lack breadth. So it's a balance that we seek. So let's look at some strategies for finding problems, because sometimes that's the hardest thing. How do you find an important problem or something that you think you can get traction on? One strategy is challenging assumptions. And I would say the hacker community is very good at that. There's things that we think about or don't think about that oftentimes should be challenged. One is the idea, perhaps, of a hard drive wipe. It's conventional wisdom that you wipe a hard drive and all of a sudden, if you have a malware infestation, it's gone. Well, maybe it'd be interesting to dig more deeply and say, well, what can live past a hard drive wipe somewhere in the system of the computer? Another is to think very big, and you've seen things like Dan Kaminsky will scan the entire internet, and this is Cooperative Association for Internet Data Analysis. They did an entire 2-month survey of the entire IPv4 space. You can also think very small, and these are showing visualizations of individual bytes within files. And so you're thinking very, very big, thinking very, very small are interesting ways to approach problems. And a classic technique, irritating software, hardware, protocols, and people in ways that they weren't designed to handle. And that's often a fruitful response. You can try and detect patterns. We all have news sources, information flows that we bring in, books that we read, people that we talk to, that we, over time though, you sense patterns, you sense things, emerging patterns that might be important to look at. For example, one might be Bitcoin. You might be watching it and you see enough samples come by in the news sources and you'd say, this is important for me to take a look at. Another is to try and sense a need. I wanted to buy a book, I wanted to buy this book, and I went on and found out that it's no longer in print, and that the 2 copies available on Amazon started at $679. So yeah, there's some used booksellers making some money if anyone buys books at that price. But the idea is you can sense a need, and maybe that's an opportunity of where you can explore some more. Another powerful technique is to look at the intersection of your interest areas, your expertise areas. For me, HCI and security, I took a look at that intersection. And you can see things that popped out were malicious interface design, because your average HCI person doesn't think about an adversary or the designer as an adversary. And so it's useful to sketch out Venn diagrams of what you're interested in and look at the intersections. Another would be just crazy intersections. For example, I have a friend who has carpal tunnel and also likes to use nunchucks. This crazy combination, but there's something here that she told me that when she uses nunchucks, her carpal tunnel gets better. I don't know, it's a data point of 1, but it might be worth a little bit of exploration to see if that's actually a technique to help improve carpal tunnel. It may be illegal in the state of New York and other states, but it might be something worth exploring. Or maybe it's like medical use marijuana. You could have nunchucks if you had carpal tunnel syndrome. Another strategy is what makes you mad. do ice cubes fall out of your, ice cubes fall on the floor when you try and get a cup of ice out of your refrigerator? Maybe you can look at doing that better. For me, a tipping point in that malicious interface research was when a flying vodka bottle appeared flying over the weather when I was trying to just see what the weather was, and a man came out at the bottom and toasted, and I'm like, and then the more that tips you off. Or maybe it's a flicker in the status bar of your browser, and you see these third-party sites, and maybe that tips you off to something that you can explore more deeply. So what makes you mad? Certain technologies, you just have to ask, what could possibly go wrong? This is a self-wiping hard drive from Toshiba. I don't know if anything's wrong with it, but it just sure sounds like something bad could happen. Another is a new file format from Wolfram Research that claims it's as everyday as a document, but as interactive as an application. To me, that's a combination that might merit further exploration, because what could possibly go wrong? And if you're short of ideas on what could possibly go wrong, you could go to Slashdot and people will tag things for you to give you ideas. Another common strategy, powerful strategy, is just looking under rocks, poking in corners where people haven't looked before. And we've seen that with the GPS phone tracking databases. People lifted a lid, took a peek, and saw things that largely weren't well known. Here's an example of, think of a multifunction printer. What goes into it? A network cable and a phone cable into the same device. Has anyone thought, can those two be bridged? I don't know, but that's a rock you might want to take a look at, or take a look under. Looking at something old, the DNS, so you can go back if you see old technologies. That's usually a sign that maybe you can dig a little more deeply. Or look at something new. Again, don't know if there's a vulnerability here, but Google makes web pages load instantly. The Chrome browser will soon silently fetch pages as you scan search results so that they will load without delay. I don't know about you, but I hesitate before clicking on certain links and don't really want my browser preloading them for me, because what could possibly go wrong? So you see these things, and assuredly people are looking at the security of this, but it just tips you off that maybe it's an area for exploration. You can also extend or generalize work that's already been done. There's been work on fingerprinting the sensors within digital cameras, and here's a paper from it. And then you say, well, how could I extend that? Well, you could look or generalize it. Well, think of all sensors. What types of sensors broadly could be fingerprinted? Can microphones be fingerprinted such that this recording here could be an MP3 tied back to this specific microphone? Or what other sensors leave unique noise or some aspect that can be fingerprinted? So you can extend, you can generalize. And of course, science fiction provides ample ideas. And this is the Diamond Age. And remember the Young Ladies Illustrated Primer, which is basically a tablet computer with artificial intelligence designed to teach children. And you can draw tremendous inspiration from these. My personal favorite probably is assuming the worst in people. That you need to look at the capabilities of what a given company, person, or government has. And it's just a useful thought experiment to think about problems. We've seen examples in the past, and to look at the incentives. And you've seen real player software or spyware, the Sony rootkit, and then some really crazy Facebook privacy interfaces. Another thought experiment is to think like a nation state. What would you do if you had godlike access to the network? What would you do if you had near unlimited processing power? That's just useful ways to think about problems. There's calls for paper that